Welcome to another episode of Four Guys Talking About AI. We got three guys today. We got my buddy Neil Polachek and Greg Sterling. John Gerard wasn't available today, so we're going to make our way today. What's up, guys? How you doing?
Good. How are you, Andy?
I'm good. Good. All right. Well, cool. So let's dig in. This week, we're going to be diving into power plays shaping AI's future. And Alphabet, Google, just leapfrogged Apple to become the world's second largest valuable company. They hit $4 trillion in enterprise value, thanks to its full stack AI dominance and Gemini's growing market share. Gemini now powering Google, Siri, and quickly closing the gap with ChatGPT. We'll talk a little bit about that. Speaking of ChatGPT, ads are coming. OpenAI confirmed that they'll be testing monetization with chat context, possibly influencing what shows up. And this is the first major step with ChatGPT entering into an ad-supported ecosystem. And we've talked about in the past a commerce layer as well. So we'll get into that a little bit. And then Meta, Facebook, Instagram, Meta made a huge move a couple weeks ago, acquiring a company called Manus, one of the fastest growing companies in the AI space, as it races to lead in the intelligent agent game. Manus is a platform that builds AI agents and also other kinds of tools. So we'll get into that. And then lastly, and kind of the overarching theme here, that we're entering into this new lock-in phase where AI assistants are everywhere and the platforms now are building moats. So Google is embedding Gemini into all of your apps. OpenAI is building post-smartphone hardware, and everyone's fighting to control your workflow and your attention. So let's jump in, guys. So Alphabet, Google just leapfrogged Apple as the most valuable company on the planet. Greg, you want to lead off with some of the things that they're doing to substantiate that growth?
Yeah, I think you said second most valuable.
Oh,
is that right?
Yeah, it's second most valuable.
NVIDIA is still number one.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know what it is this morning, but anyway, the reason that Google is benefiting like that, its valuation jumped like that, is because there's a perception among the investment community that they have emerged from this period of challenge from ChatGPT and others, and they are now kind of in this strong position to consolidate power and win the market. They also announced, Apple and Google jointly announced a deal where Siri and some of the other features on Apple Intelligence will be powered by Gemini, and that's also fueling some of this. So the sense is that Google is now firing on all cylinders. They stumbled for a while, and now they're back, and their AI products are getting better, and they're doing a lot of things to bring usage together, the kind of lock-in discussion that we'll have.
And they have a $300 billion advertising business. I mean,
right, which is Google is the only, Alphabet is the only company, Google is the only company that has the quote unquote full stack, the full AI stack. They don't have to use NVIDIA chips. You know, they've got all these other elements. They've got a foundation model, et cetera, and they've got this revenue model that can fuel it indefinitely. Whereas other companies have to raise money from investors, and there's a lot of skepticism about whether ChatGPT will continue to be able to do that. And I think that that's one of the reasons why they're accelerating their ads program, because they've got to get revenue in the door, more revenue. They have revenue. They have billions of dollars in revenue, but get more revenue in the door and show investors that they've got a model that's going to succeed for the long term. I think it's partly about getting revenue now and also about giving confidence to the market that they're going to be here to stay.
They've also diversified their portfolio quite a bit. I mean, that's why they call it Alphabet, because there is, for every letter in the alphabet, there's a name of a company that's part of their portfolio. So
yeah, Waymo, that's not as true as it used to be, though. That's not as true as it used to be.
Well, it still is. I mean, when you have like a company like Waymo that's on the rise, and we'll see what happens with Waymo, but you've got other companies within their portfolio, and you've got Google Cloud, for example, that is substantial business with Google Cloud that competes with Amazon serves AWS. And interestingly, a couple months ago, AWS and Google created a partnership to be able to create redundancy for each other, so that in case there's a large outage that may happen, like what happened with Verizon.
Like Verizon.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. That there's going to be redundancy. So that will create more of a consistent uptime kind of experience for all the customers. But to your point, Greg, all of that creates the full stack across a number of different markets. And of course, their advertising business is the biggest. And then all the data that comes with that, they are still Google after all. So everybody uses Google still, even though we're all using ChatGPT or Claude or whatever other tools we're using. They're deeply embedded into all these other platforms, and they own Android and so forth, right? So they've done a great job at diversification, and now connectivity is kind of this next phase with this growth, and then powering Siri is a big deal because that extends their reach into the iPhone ecosystem as well.
Which they already had with their search deal.
Yeah.
But now they have it with.
Yeah, but that was a antitrust violation, right? The default search deal where Apple was getting, up to $20 billion a year from Google was deemed to be a violation of antitrust law. And the court didn't enact any of the really strong remedies that the Justice Department had asked for. They sort of essentially gave Google a slap on the wrist, with the judge worrying about being overturned on appeal and kind of saying that explicitly. And so we can argue about the strength of the remedies, but they're not very strong. And one of the concerns was that Google would leverage its existing search monopoly and dominance across a number of products, Android, Chrome, etc., to create a monopoly or dominant position in AI. And that's exactly what we're starting to see. They are executing on that playbook by integrating Gemini into almost every single product that they have and kind of pushing it on people. It's at the same time it's getting better and they're doing some innovative things, but they're trying to sort of suck their users into the Gemini fold through all these points of contact that Google has, especially search, but not exclusively.
We were talking about this a little bit before we started recording, but this is Google's push into this whole personalization space, right? This is part of how they are creating personalized agents. I think this is, they see that this is the new frontier. This is really honest. This is Apple's opportunity. And it's kind of amazing to me that Apple's asleep at the wheel on this. At this point in the game, we're already, several years into this game, and Apple is like the silence is loud at this point from Apple's standpoint.
From an AI perspective.
From an AI perspective, absolutely. Where's the innovation?
I think they had some organizational issues, some personnel issues, and they misjudged the significance of this whole phenomenon. Right.
Yeah.
I think they were slow to recognize how big it was and how important it was. And by the time they kind of caught up to that, they were already in a situation where they didn't have the in-house personnel and technology to really execute. And so they're doing this kind of, I think it's a bad deal for them.
I think it's a bad acquiring deal. Companies, in my opinion, before there's something to be said to be the fast follower. I get that, kind of thing, but you've got companies like Anthropic and OpenAI that are just complete breakouts in the space. Meta just acquired Manus, which is one of our stories here that we'll talk about. So Meta is leaning in aggressively. They're not going to let this moment pass by. So where's Apple in all of this? How come they're not acquiring? There are a lot of really valuable, interesting companies that aren't just wrappers at this point.
That's what they should have done. They should have acquired a smaller company that would allow them that had good technology, that would have allowed them to shape the product more than what they're going to be able to do with Gemini. And I think bringing Gemini in, I kept having these visions. It's not directly analogous, but in the Empire Strikes Back, the scene where they're on the Lando Calrissian planet, and he takes them into the conference room, and there's Darth Vader. There's a little bit of that going on. It was sort of like when Bill Gates invested in Apple when they were sort of near bankruptcy, and people booed that. I think by allowing Google into a core function of the iPhone, this guts of Siri, they really have a hard time. They're going to have to do a lot of contortions and have paragraph after paragraph about how they're preserving privacy. They have been marketing against Google for now several years. They have been marketing against Google for a long time, and now saying, oh, we brought Google in, but there are all these layers of protection in our private cloud and this and that and the other and the other. I think it taints, I would go so far as to say it taints the Apple brand. Now, that is an extreme position that most people on the street probably won't share. But I think it undermines that privacy message. And at the same time, the search deal created a disincentive for them to develop their own search technology. And this does a bit of the same. I have a person that I know that's saying, well, the Apple's just buying time until they can develop their own proprietary thing with this. I think this creates a disincentive for them to invest in AI and to rely on Google in a way that they would not if they were forced to either buy a company or develop something in-house. And I think it's a problem for them.
Does it accelerate Cook's departure? I mean, that's what I take this as. He's halfway out the door, not willing to commit big time on AI. Let's just do a deal to make Siri a lot better for now, and let somebody else worry about the next version of Apple.
It's a short-term safe move, right? It's just
it's conservative. It's very conservative.
Yeah.
It's risk adverse. I mean, Tim Cook, in fairness to Tim Cook, he has really taken it very far from a revenue and market capitalization standpoint. He is not an innovator. He is not a product innovator. He is not a visionary. He's an operator, and he's been able to steward the ship that Steve Jobs built for a long, long time. But this is a crisis moment for them. And as smart and as capable as he is not the man any longer for the job. And I think you're right that he's going to go in a year or so and they'll announce somebody else. But that next person really needs to think very creatively and broadly about the future, not just build incremental products that build on top of existing success stories, which has been their strategy thus far. And it's worked very, very well for them. But I think we're at a point where that no longer is viable. And that's what the market seems to be saying here.
Yeah. When Tim Cook became the CEO of Apple in 2011, the market value was $350 billion.
Exactly.
Right. And now today, the total market value is $3.8 trillion to $3.9 trillion.
It's a $4 trillion company.
Yeah.
That he's brought it to this point.
Yeah. So amazing growth and no doubt really just like amazing historical, kind of growth with that. But they are at an inflection moment right now to say, what is at the core of Apple? Where is their innovation? Because, how many, MacBook Pros can you get, or iPads or iPhones? At some point, the technology has to leapfrog again into a next phase. And if Apple's not innovating, you're going to see Johnny Ive and OpenAI doing the innovation over there, or you're going to see Google doing the innovation over there. But what happens to Apple and all that?
So it seems like this goes into some other stuff we were talking about, that OpenAI has an ad model go build to compete kind of on the Google front, and a device model to go build to compete with Apple. And those are two really challenging markets to go compete in. Johnny Ive or whoever, those are big markets to go build partnerships, build the right hardware, build the distribution. That is it. Those are both big undertakings.
Well, to some degree, OpenAI is trying to use the cliche, boil the ocean, right? Literally, they want it to be the operating system for all content and data and everything. That's not going to happen. They wanted to displace Chrome. They wanted to displace Google. They want to do all these sort of vertical things. They want to do B2B stuff. They want to do B2C stuff. That's what got them into trouble to some degree, is that their core product was very good, and they reached a point where it wasn't sort of dramatically improving, and they were focused on all these other areas, taking it for granted that they would still be the leader, sort of going forward. And Google caught them. Or at least the perception is that Google caught them. I have some quibbles with how good the Gemini is. There are a lot of Gemini partisans who think it's better. But
And Google hasn't caught them, but they're catching them. I mean,
well, they've caught him in the sense that the perception in the market is that Google is as good now or better than ChatGPT. Actual experience and our data show something different. But the investment community, which is really the audience that everybody's playing to. That's right. That's right.
Public
Talk a little bit about the research that you guys did, because I thought that was really interesting.
Okay. Just real quickly, very quickly, not to
let me give, while Greg searches for something, the takeaway for us is, at least for me, is that AI is now a part of our daily life utility for most American adults, probably most adults around the world. These tools are now as common as search was 3 years ago. These chat tools, these AI tools are now a utility. It's not a fad anymore. It's part of the way we go about our day. And to me, that was sort of like the biggest takeaway. Like, this is here to stay. So, and that's where probably Apple failed, realizing that it would be as much a utility 3 years after introduction as it is today.
let me share my screen real quickly here. Okay, so just real quickly, this is a survey that we did in January, just this month. It's 550 qualified respondents. We started out with over 700. We qualified them. They had to be AI and search users, but they're still pretty representative of the general adult population of the United States. So we asked people, how has your usage changed in the past 6 months of AI with AI? And half the audience is saying we're using it more. So to Neil's point, this is becoming more and more deeply ingrained in daily life. And then we asked them, have you switched your primary AI in the past 6 months? Now, in terms of primary AI, ChatGPT is the leader, followed by, with about 2x the share, according to our data, that Gemini has. This is a surprising result. Almost half the people said that they had switched within the last 6 months, and the beneficiary of that, this is obviously a subset of the survey population, but the beneficiary of that is ChatGPT, not Gemini. Gemini is getting some switchers, but this is totally contrary to the market narrative that Gemini now is in the driver's seat. So there's on the ground, it's a more complicated reality than what the what you're seeing in the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times. So that's just a kind of,
and AI multiple uses per day has gone up considerably from the last wave of research we did. I don't know if you can find that slide, Greg, but that's a pretty that's consistent with this thing's is now part of our daily life. There it is.
So this is the usage frequency. So what we've done multiple ways of a version of the survey, and we asked people, how often do you use AI? In June of last year, you can see the breakdown on the right side, which is multiple times a day. 32% said that they were in that group, and then daily is 33%, weekly and monthly. And what we have seen is a movement from more casual to more frequent usage. And this most recent set of data that's in the chart, represented in the chart, the multiple times a day group is now 40%. And so there's this migration from infrequent to more frequent usage as people, recognize the value, get comfortable with it, find more use cases.
And then it's rolls too, because if you get a good experience, you figure out, oh, I can use it for this. Oh, I can use it for this. Oh, I can use it for this. So it's got a kind of a multiplier effect.
Anyway, that's just a small part of the survey data.
Let's lead it to our next story on that note, because ChatGPT announced that ads are coming, and as people are using it more and more, this becomes could potentially be a new significant revenue driver for them. So they confirmed that it's testing ads on the free and the Go tiers, and those ads may be influenced by what you're talking about. So this is the moment that ChatGPT shifts from a tool to a platform and from a utility to a business. in addition to their subscription business, which is the lion's share of their revenue right now. So tell us a little bit, Neil. You want to talk a little bit about what's going on with their ads and uh, let's
Well,
dig
I
in.
read it pretty briefly, but what they're going to do is they're going to do ads for their lower tier spending account, which I think is $8 for GoTo. I hadn't heard of that product. That's a relatively new product. Half of the users in our survey actually pay for their tool, so it's only going to impact probably half of the current users. That the advertising model. We talked a little bit about it earlier today. It's a little bit like the streamers charging for streaming, no ads versus with ads. But as I think about it, I'd much rather have ads on my ChatGPT application than in my streaming experience. I don't like to wait 3 minutes to see what's the next scene,
Yeah.
and where the TV show's going. That's a much more, in my opinion, a much more disruptive advertising experience than stuff that sits alongside or is surrounding sort of the information I'm trying to get at.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's much different experience in linear TV. When you get an ad that gets shown to you, it's not contextually relevant. It's breaking up your attention of really what you're interested in. Whereas like these ads, I could see definitely in ChatGPT, those ads potentially being useful in the moment, because if you're looking for something,
Right.
on the surface of ads, that actually could be part of the experience that adds to it instead of it being a disruptor.
I think that there is an opportunity, as you describe, to create a better ad experience. I mean, this was the promise of search advertising.
Yeah.
It's relevant, it's in context, and search advertising is not a great experience, notwithstanding the fact that Google's making tons and tons of money. But I mean, Google manipulates the search results in order to drive more clicks and generate more revenue. Google is also very aggressively testing advertising in its various AI ad products or AI surfaces. Ads will be in Gemini, ads will be in AI mode, ads will be in AI overviews. And they announced agentic shopping this last week. And one of the features of that was a new ad product called direct offers, which are discounts in a product research context. That's sort of the entree, but it will be, there'll be more kinds of ad units. But this is what has to be done, is that they have to create new ad units specifically tailored to the AI experience. It's not going to work. I mean, ChatGPT has to do that by definition. It's not going to work for Google to take its AdWords product and plop it into the middle of some AI result or put it on the side of an AI result. People just ignore that. They're just going to ignore that. They're going to have to build a better experience like you're describing.
Well, and I think for OpenAI, they can build a perfect product, but then they have to have a distribution platform, seller network. I mean, there's a whole lot of work to add.
Well, they have 900 million users. People will show up for that.
Yeah, but you still have to deliver them results and do all the stuff that ad platforms have to do back to justify the spend. Just because they have 900 million users does not make it a business. It makes it a business opportunity, but it does not make
Sure.
advertising business.
Sure.
All the other things that you have to put into that to deliver, on an ROI to an advertiser. And so it's, they can get there fast, but they have to have the infrastructure and the systems.
Right. The ad serving, the analytics,
all that stuff.
Right. But I think they can build most of that.
Fortunately, they are an AI company, so they can have the AI kind of accelerate a lot of this stuff for them.
Right. I mean, the thing that's going to be challenging for them is getting small businesses to buy ads, which I don't even know if that's immediately on their roadmap. That will be the thing that they need. The technology infrastructure they can build, it may take them time. The sales infrastructure or quasi sales infrastructure is going to be harder, reaching those customers.
Even dealing with agencies, even if it's not small business.
That's the hard part, actually. I think there's such a pent up audience for very narrowly targeted ads that are aligned with what people are looking for, that are contextually relevant. And if you can get into the zeitgeist of, somebody in the moment, That's the holy grail. So
I
advertising
think you guys
agents,
are underestimating how hard it is.
I think this will be a very fast on ramp actually for ChatGPT once they start rolling out ads on the sales side. The yield inventory, of that is going to be the harder part of like how do they rotate those ads? How do they serve them up in a way that gets them the most margin? All that kind of stuff is probably the hardest part. But we'll see. I mean, it's all brand new, and this is just the front end of it. They're just announcing that they're going into this. So, you know, we'll,
Andy, how big a business will it be for them 12 months from now?
it'll be
Andy,
significant. My guess is it'll be 20 to 30% of their business.
how much? What put a dollar amount on that?
Well,
So that's six
5 billion, 10 billion?
not in a year.
So I'm asking, a billion in a year?
I can see that, or at least a run rate of that.
There is a lot of demand among brands for advertising because there's a lot of anxiety about AI visibility. There's a lot of debate about whether it matters, whether it doesn't matter, how people are using it. And the idea that you could buy, that was always the proposition for Google, is that it's hard to rank organically, but you can always buy an ad right at the top of the page. And so that same proposition is here for a lot of brands that want to show up in relevant contexts for awareness purposes. And so I think there is demand. I agree that there is pent up demand for it. And people, as I said in another conversation earlier today, people want the analytics. They want the data that ads will provide. There's no data right now available to people. And so ads will give them data about what the queries are and other information.
Is it going to be CPMs or going to be CPCs, or what's the model, or is it both? And if it's both, when somebody, let's say the ad is embedded as a link in the text that ChatGPT serves up, when somebody mouses over that and it pops up that brand,
Is that a CPM?
is that a CPM, kind of moment?
They've got a bunch of smart people who have a lot of ad experience there, and they will be working through all those things. They are not, the people that they have hired have vast experience with advertising, and so they are working through all these issues, I'm sure, and they're going to test some things. I'm sure they'll workshop some stuff, they'll test some stuff, and the process of sort of getting the bugs worked out will play out over a couple of years at least.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, let's shift into our next story. That was great. Let's shift into our next story here, where Meta acquired Manus a couple of weeks ago. It's a quiet but important move for Meta. It's fast growing. What Manus is, it's a fast growing AI agent company that hit $100 million in ARR under a year. So this fits a clear pattern for Meta. They want to own intelligent agents, on-device AI, and the infrastructure layer that powers them. What Manus does is, think of it like this, is that you can tell Manus that you want it to create any kind of experience. You can create agents that do things for you. Go plan my trip for me, or those kinds of things. Or you can have it create websites or web experiences or apps or a number of these kinds of things. And it's a very deep kind of platform, very much like Lovable, where when you tell it to do something, it'll give you a checklist to say, here's what I understand that you asked me to do. Here's how I would do it. Does this sound good to you? And then you say yes, or you can modify it. And when you say yes, it implements the plan, and then it delivers a product for you. So if you have an idea for, a certain kind of product or something that's going to help you in your own personal business, or even in your own personal life, it'll go ahead and create those kinds of tools for you. This is a big deal because Manus is in the same space as Lovable, Cursor, Bolt, those kinds of companies. It is one of the fastest growing companies in history. So it grew to $1 million in ARR under a year. That's a ridiculous speed.
You know what Meta paid for?
$2
billion. $2 billion.
Yeah. So they're definitely going after the space, and their goal is to own this kind of ecosystem and pull in the developer community into the Meta space as well. So it's not necessarily just a consumer-facing solution. It's a way to bring the developer community into Meta's ecosystem, where developers will create all kinds of apps as well. So not only will they own this kind of Manus app store that gets developed, but they'll also own the platform to create those kinds of apps. And all of that is a big move on Meta's part to be able to own that corner of the market. What do you guys think about this move?
So my quick response to that is it's, they get a good product. It'll open up a number of possibilities for them. I think Meta is kind of the anti-Apple in the sense that they've been spending wildly, just outrageous amounts of money on AI, and they've been throwing a lot of spaghetti at the refrigerator. And I think the Manus acquisition is both a good one and also reflects a kind of incoherence around their AI strategy. Like they've just been buying people, poaching employees, creating new organizations internally, creating chaos. And, this is another sort of, they're starting again, or they're trying something new, in contrast to Apple's inaction or insufficient action.
So imagine, Greg, on that note, that they're going to use Manus internally for those organizations that you just mentioned to be able to build internal apps and internal capabilities that will accelerate all kinds of new functionality and new kinds of capabilities in ways that people engage with Instagram or Facebook or WhatsApp.
All in the service of selling more ads.
Without a doubt.
That's the world we live in, isn't it? That's what funks all this stuff.
It didn't used to be the world we live in, but it's the world we live in now.
Well, I go back, I always reflect on half of the world's advertising is spent on 5% of the world's population. Half of it, that still holds true.
Bottom line, the Manus acquisition is a good acquisition for Meta.
Well, so what this is saying, if you zoom out here, is that we're entering into this lock-in period where the large language model experience, this is, OpenAI, even Gemini, Claude, and so forth, Perplexity, that experience is being somewhat commoditized. And we're entering into this lock-in phase where Google is wearing Gemini into every app that you use. OpenAI is building hardware, and that's going to be coming soon. All of these other stories that we talked about earlier here in this episode, all these moves are now this lock-in period to really, lock this audience in, so that each one of these companies, their desire is to be able to, have loyal mind share, and for you to be able to, for their users to use those tools more and have a high switching cost to be able to move to other platforms. So, for example, when you connect your Gemini to all of your Google apps, and you have all that data that's now locked into your AI, so that when you start to chat with it, it can draw on that data to be able to deliver a very personalized experience. That's the outcome of the lock-in that Google's going after. And each one of these companies are going after this. So it's a really interesting kind of phase that we're in. And this lock-in period we're just at the beginning of this, but it's happening.
Well, ChatGPT doesn't really have any tool like that except for user inertia. People who have gotten comfortable with ChatGPT and want to stay with it because they're familiar with it, they don't have any kind of alternative. They don't own a browser. They don't own an operating system. They're trying to build hardware, and that will be a version of this if and when those hardware devices come out and they get any traction, because they will be ChatGPT centric. But really, Google is the one. Microsoft has some of the same assets that Google does. They have email, they have Office 365, they have a browser, they have a search engine, but they just don't. They just can't catch a break. People are not interested in using Copilot. Microsoft is trying to integrate it in the same way that Google is into its various products and different distribution channels, but that has not been successful for Microsoft. Whereas for Google, especially with the new and improved Gemini 3, they are getting positive reviews, and people are now seeing that as a worthy product, many of them comparable to ChatGPT. And putting that in the browser, in search, on the operating system, in the Google Assistant, in Gmail, in Google Photos. Putting that everywhere that people touch and interact with Google products will create this kind of inertia and dependence. I'm already invested here. My photos are here. My email is here. And, I don't find Gemini in these different products to be particularly helpful. Gemini is a standalone thing, is relatively useful, but Gemini in Gmail and Gemini in Chrome and Gemini in Google Workspace is not that useful in my experience.
And also when I try even, doing it to change images and how powerful Nano Banana is, it's still not very intuitive. I find myself having to go to other resources to say, here's what I'm actually trying to do. How do I do this? Because the natural language kind of request is just not returning the results that I want. So there's definitely, some improvement that needs to be.
But you can imagine that they'll make it because they've made great strides since the early days of their AI stuff, where they were kind of a laughing stock and people were continuously roasting them for, these gaffes and these like weird images and things. What I tend to do now, ChatGPT sped up its image creation quite a bit, but it's still not as fast as Gemini. So what I tend to do is I will do a draft of an image that I want to create in Gemini, because often that's faster. And then I will take that over to OpenAI and I will say how I want it modified.
Mm-hmm.
The OpenAI image ultimately, I think, is a more polished one. People would argue with me, but I think the OpenAI still does a better job with images. But Gemini is faster and easier in some ways to work with, notwithstanding what you're saying about it not being particularly intuitive. And I also find the information that I get from ChatGPT still better than Gemini. Just the general information and experience and just all my interactions. Where Gemini, I'm not coding, so I'm, that whole side of it, I don't have any direct experience with. But where Gemini, seems to really do pretty well is in this sort of hybrid search environment where they're taking Google data and they're creating the conversational experience around it. That is where they are having success, I think, versus ChatGPT's version of that. And shopping now, they just had this big agentic, I think I mentioned it, agentic shopping announcement. That is where they will have some great potential success because they have Google Merchant Center, because they have, just enormous amount of shopping data. They just have a lot of data. They have data on
also on the shopping side from the customer side. So they'll be able to showcase that capability in a way that nobody else can.
Right. And the ads will work there. This is a place where ads will work, because if I'm looking for a 55-inch TV that has these kinds of parameters, true blacks and OLED screen and all of that, I can specify all of that and they can match an ad directly to that is consistent with what I'm looking for. And that will be a very effective ad scenario. That's a very effective potential ad scenario for them.
Yeah.
And they've got all those assets. So this is an area where they can really, really shine if they do it right. And they have more partners also than OpenAI. They have the same partners OpenAI does, and they have more of them, so they can come out of the gate pretty fast and have a pretty polished experience. We'll see what shows up, but at least hypothetically it's possible. OpenAI has a longer time to market, to develop the infrastructure, to get the data, to sort of refine the user experience, all of that stuff.
Yeah. Well, it's clear that the race is on. We're here in January. It's the beginning of the year. It's going to be an exciting year for all this development. And that's our episode for today. So thanks everybody for listening. Great conversation, Greg. Appreciate it. And we'll catch you next week. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.